Hello everyone, and welcome to the 2022 State of the Cancer Program address for the Ohio State University Comprehensive Cancer Center, James Cancer Hospital, and Solov Research Institute. I'm Dr. David Cohn, the interim CEO of the James, and it's my absolute privilege to be speaking to you from the James Outpatient Care at Carmenton, one of the first buildings that's going to open in 2023 in Ohio State's recently named Carmenton Innovation District on the university's West Campus. This multi-story facility, just one of several that'll be part of Carmenton, will be an integral component to our continuous drive to improve the lives of patients with cancer, from diagnosis to treatment and all the way through survivorship. This new center will be entirely devoted to cancer care and will focus primarily on prostate, kidney, and bladder cancers, as well as on sarcomas and hematologic malignancies, cancers for which treatments have advanced to the point that outpatient care is now an option in most cases. Research-based care is a hallmark of our cancer program, and our new center will strengthen that concept by increasing community access to our hundreds of innovative clinical trials that offer the latest targeted treatments designed to combat each patient's biologically unique cancer. The center will also expand Ohio State's digital pathology program, enabling pathologists and oncologists to more quickly and more precisely view images of tumor samples in real time to ensure proper diagnoses that lead to more effective treatments. As an outpatient facility, the center will accommodate cancer surgeries that don't require an overnight stay, such as certain prostate procedures. One of the most exciting features of this spacious building will be a 55,000 square foot proton therapy center, being constructed in partnership with Nationwide Children's Hospital to offer the most sophisticated radiation therapy available today to both adult and to pediatric patients. Proton therapy is a cutting-edge form of radiation treatment that uses protons, or positively charged particles found within atoms, instead of conventional radiation to kill cancer cells. Administered by a machine called a cyclotron that delivers a high-energy proton beam painlessly through the skin, proton therapy more precisely targets the tumor and limits radiation exposure to surrounding tissue and reduces the chance of both short-term and long-term side effects that's associated with conventional radiation. And in the not-too-distant future, our Proton Therapy Center will also be equipped to deliver an even newer and more highly targeted form of proton therapy called FLASH that's being studied in preclinical models and is not yet approved by the FDA. Preclinical data have shown that FLASH therapy can reduce a typical weeks-long treatment regimen to a single treatment in less than a second. That may sound like science fiction, but it will be science fact at our new outpatient cancer center, a facility that will help us to better serve more and more people who put their trust in the OSUCCC James for their cancer care as we continued our shared journey towards a cancer-free world. And now I'd like to toss it over to Dr. Pollack.
Thank you, David. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Rafe Pollack, Director of Ohio State's Comprehensive Cancer Center, and I too would like to welcome you to the 2022 State of the Cancer Program address for the OSUCCC James. I'm delighted to be speaking to you from another building that will open in 2023 within the Carmenton Innovation District on Ohio State's West Campus, the Interdisciplinary Research Facility. Designed to advance the university's strategic plan, this 5-story, 305,000 square foot facility will accommodate multiple research disciplines, including biomedical, life sciences, engineering, agriculture, environmental sciences, social determinants of health, and artificial intelligence. Importantly, the facility will contain 2 floors dedicated entirely to the OSUCCC James, including our Pelotonia Institute for Immuno-Oncology and our growing endeavors in cancer engineering. As you may recall, the Pelotonia Institute for Immuno-Oncology, or PIIO, was launched in July 2019. The PIIO is a comprehensive bench-to-bedside research initiative focusing on harnessing the body's immune system to fight cancer at all levels, from prevention to treatment and survivorship. The Institute's overall ambition is to become a leader in driving immuno-oncology breakthroughs in systems immuno-oncology, immunogenomics, cell therapy, and translational immuno-oncology. Led by its founding director, Dr. Zihai Li, The PIIO is supported by more than 100 investigators with expertise ranging from the development of cancer vaccines to bioinformatics and statistical modeling for high-throughput immunogenomic screening. Gaining expansive new space within the interdisciplinary research facility will certainly bolster the efforts of our PIIO investigators, who are working at the forefront of what many consider to be the next frontier of cancer care. The other major area of our cancer program that will benefit from new space in this facility is our Center for Cancer Engineering, curing cancer through research in engineering sciences. Led by Dr. Matt Ringel and Dr. Jonathan Song, who serve as co-directors, this center is a collaboration to design, develop, and integrate engineering technologies and data analytic approaches with cancer biology, biomechanics, and fundamental sciences, all with the goal of enhancing cancer prevention, detection, diagnosis, and treatment. We can identify many clinical situations in cancer for which engineering solutions might be relevant. The Center for Cancer Engineering's primary focuses are on multimodal and multi-scale imaging and detection, tissue engineering, biomaterials, biomechanics, and drug delivery, and machine learning artificial intelligence. Certainly, our new space within the interdisciplinary research facility will help in each of these endeavors. These are exciting times for cancer research at Ohio State as we continue to expand our capacity for intricate investigations that will lead to better patient care and improve the lives of countless thousands.
We're excited that you've gathered tonight to help us celebrate the success of the cancer program and to share in our vision for the program's continuing trajectory.
Ahead this evening, we have 4 pairs of physician scientists who are eager to share their work with you, a panel discussion with the 2 of us, and more.
In the meantime, please enjoy this video as we make our way to the Fawcett Center to join you for the remainder of this event. See you soon.
Please welcome to the stage Dr. Uma Borate and Dr. Sumi Vasu.
Hello, everyone. My name is Uma Borate. I'm a clinical associate professor in the section of acute leukemia in the Division of Hematology. And I also lead the acute leukemia clinical research disease group.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sumi Vasu. I'm an associate professor in the Division of Hematology in blood and marrow transplantation. I lead the disease-specific research group for BMT trials. I'm also the medical director for the cell therapy lab at the James.
Can I just say how wonderful it is to see everybody here in person after 2 years of COVID-related challenges. But I do want to ask you, how many of you have procrastinated over the last 2 years in doing your screening mammography, colonoscopy? Maybe you've caught up in the last 6 months or so. Anyone? And Sumi, what about you? What about you and that blood cancer screening test that we were all supposed to do?
I did the routine screening, but what is the blood cancer screening test that you're talking about?
Well, that is a trick question because there is no such test. And let's talk a little bit about why, because as many of you in this room may know that in the US, over 185,000 patients a year are diagnosed with either leukemia, myeloma, or lymphoma. So we know that this is clearly an issue. This is what we know about genetic mutations that will accumulate in the blood of all of us as we continue to age. Over the age of 40, but especially after the age of 60, all of us, or most of us, let's put it that way, and some of us in this room right now may be developing mutations that can predispose us to a blood cancer in the future. We call these mutations or groups of cells as clones, and the process is called clonal hematopoiesis. The acronym for clonal hematopoiesis in this state is called CHIP, just like the Lay's or the Doritos chips that we all might enjoy. Why does this matter? It matters because having this condition in the blood not only increases your risk of a blood cancer in the future potentially, but also your risk of dying of any cause. So just think about that for a minute. Any cause, not just a blood cancer, but any cause. And this is especially significant for people over the age of 70 that have this condition as opposed to those that don't. And you may ask why. Why does this make any sense? But think about it. From the time you're born to the time you die, the one organ or tissue that touches every single other organ and tissue in your body is the blood. It circulates from your brain to your heart, to your lungs, to your kidneys, to your liver, to all over your body. And it is some of these mutations circulate along with it and interact with all these different organs and disease processes that might emerge from it. And so the biggest risk factor actually, even more than a blood cancer, if you have CHIP, is the development of heart disease. If you have CHIP, you're 4 times more likely to end up in the hospital with a heart attack or a stroke than if you don't have this condition. So those are some things that I think are really important that have not been really thought of or addressed in detail as yet. So what are we doing about it? So here at the James, we've started this new program. We call it the HALT program. I think it's a very cool acronym. And it starts for hematological abnormalities at risk of leukemic transformation. And with the talented people that you see on this slide, our goal is twofold. One is to identify individuals at high risk that have these mutations that could go on to develop blood cancers, and these mutations could be acquired, meaning somehow, sometime in your life, with the process of aging and all our exposures, you got the mutation, or maybe we inherited them from our parents or grandparents and we were just unaware of them. We are going to collaborate, and we already do, very closely with our cardiology colleagues because, as I mentioned, heart disease is a big factor in people with these mutations, and hopefully, as we learn more about this process and how it interacts with other organs, we're going to collaborate across the cancer center with multi-specialties to make an impact. And we are also, and I think this is something that is really innovative, we're probably the first clinical trial in the US, but hopefully, and from what I can tell, even the world, that is actually launching a clinical trial to prevent the development of leukemia in high-risk individuals that have these mutations, targeting the immune system. We're targeting a cytokine called IL-1 beta, which is really important in the process of clonal hematopoiesis or CHIP and its progression to an acute leukemia. So as I end my talk and pass the baton over to Dr. Basu, I wanted to leave you with this vision. Here in the state of Ohio, which is our main catchment area, we have people that come from big rural farming communities that have farmed for generations and all the chemical exposures that come with that. Communities that grow up in industrial towns and work on factory floors. We have our inner city communities that have real challenges because of the social determinants of health and their diet. And then you have people like myself and Sumi who've come from halfway across the world, and we grew up there, but now we call Ohio our home. And we really do not understand all the different things that go into why all of these different individuals acquire these mutations and what factors actually lead to the development of eventual blood cancers or other diseases in these individuals. So as we try to map Ohio, I'm excited about this vision of intervening potentially early. And as I talk through this process, and maybe we chat a decade from now, I'll be able to give you a lot more information on every individual that wants to find out their risk of potentially developing a blood cancer and how we can work with your physicians to minimize this risk as well as other diseases like heart disease. So I'm going to turn the baton over to Sumi. As we work on disease prevention, I want to turn the baton over for her to talk about the other end of the spectrum. Thank you.
Thank you, Uma. You've all heard of chemotherapy and radiation therapy to fight cancer. We asked the question, how can we harness the patient's own immune system to fight cancer? Every single one of you in this audience have had a sore throat or fever at some point in your life. That was your immune system hard at work, helping you to fight the infection and get you back on track. We have a variety of cells, but the cell that we chose to focus on are called T lymphocytes. These T lymphocytes work in concert with other cells to fight enemies, both foreign, such as viruses and pathogens, and domestic, such as cancer cells. CAR T cells, or chimeric antigen receptor T cells, you can call it CAR T cells for short, is an example of a highly effective and targeted approach using the patient's own immune system to fight cancer. The word chimeric comes from the word chimera, which is based on a Greek monster which has body parts of 3 different animals combined. So when you apply this concept to a cell, you take a T cell, and inside the T cell, you insert a gene based on a viral vector that has very effective immune properties of other immune cells. So this super powerful T cell now has 3 different properties. It can be redirected to the cancer, meaning these T cells traffic to the tumor. It can recognize and kill the cancer, and most importantly, it can multiply and self-propagate. So truly, these CAR T cells are living drugs. So our goal here at the James is what we call point-of-care manufacturing of cell therapies. So cell therapy is being manufactured at the place the patient is being treated. First, we take blood from the patient, separate them into cells, and collect the T lymphocytes. Then we add a viral vector which has the chimeric antigen gene. And then the cells grow, and all this process happens in an automated process using a machine called the Miltenyi Prodigy. Because of support from the James and from Grateful Patients Philanthropy, we were able to purchase this machine that you see, which costs well over $300,000. And this process is done where the cells are manufactured right here at the James in our cell therapy lab. After seeking permission from the FDA, we launched a first-in-human clinical trial where we manufacture CAR T cells targeting 3 different proteins on the surface of lymphoid cancers. So you might ask, what is first in human? So not only is it the first time that CAR T cells have been manufactured at the James and Ohio State to treat cancer, this is the first time in the world CAR T cells targeting 3 different antigens have been manufactured. So that's very exciting to be part of this innovative research. And we've already treated 4 patients. To celebrate the research, to celebrate the hard work of the cell therapy lab and the inpatient teams of the BMT cell therapy program, and the patient's participation, we have the patient cut a cake celebrating their CAR T birthday. So the future is very bright. While this is a very, very exciting step, by no means do we want to rest on our laurels. This is just the tip of the iceberg. The next frontier is developing CAR T cells to fight solid tumors, which affect a vast and much more people in the United States. All the assays, the manufacturing methodologies, the infrastructure, the personnel are all in place. And this is a resource that's available to every researcher and physician at the cancer center, no matter what cancer that they are working on. So between Uma's vision of detecting cancer cells before they manifest and our approach of manufacturing immune cells here at the James, we are one step closer to achieving a cancer-free world. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Dr. Alex Skardal and Dr. Priya Dediya.
Hello, my name is Dr. Alex Skardal. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Biomedical Engineering. I'm a steering committee member in the Center for Cancer Engineering, and my lab focuses on biomaterials, biofabrication technologies, and we deploy these technologies in organoids and organ-on-a-chip platforms. I'm one of the engineers who has helped develop some of the technologies that we're about to talk about.
Good afternoon. My name is Priya Dediya. I'm an endocrine surgeon in the Department of Surgery and also a member of the Center for Cancer Engineering. And I have a background in molecular biology, and so I'm able to take the tissues that I operate from patients that I operate on, and in my lab we work on making organoid models to study drug resistance and metastatic progression. So I want to tell you a little bit about organoids. So organoids are a small three-dimensional platform that can be derived from primary patient tissues as well as other models, and we can use them to study many different things. They can be very small, so they can range from anywhere from 100 microns, or they can be visible by the naked eye and be about 2 millimeters in size. And we can make them from patients that we operate on or from biopsies, so this makes it very handy for us to use to study rare cancers especially. The really nice thing about organoids is that they're pretty easy to establish, so they tend to be pretty inexpensive, especially compared to xenograft models. But what I want to point your attention to is that, especially compared to some of the traditional models that we use, like cell lines, organoids have a bit more heterogeneity than cell lines, so that gives us a little more complexity than we would see with cell lines. But in addition to that, we also get to study human physiology. So unlike the mouse models, certain cancer types, especially endocrine cancers, really have differences compared to the mouse model from the human model. And so using that human physiology aspect is really important. The nice thing about organoids is they're becoming more and more widely accepted, but we still have a bit of a way to go, especially in studying certain types of cancers like rare cancers.
So the other technology that we combine with organoids is microfluidic device technology. So you can see on the screen in the bottom right some examples of some devices. So these are small fluid flow devices that allow us to push different types of fluid past the organoids or other cells and essentially recapitulate vasculature, blood vessels, in the lab outside of animals or humans. And so this allows us to study things like metastasis in the lab. This is a microscope slide with 6 completely independent tumor-on-a-chip devices. You can see they're really small. They're smaller than mice even for the most part. And we're actually modeling cancer in our labs right now for colorectal cancer, metastasis in colorectal cancer, adrenocortical carcinoma, and thyroid cancer. The other thing that this allows us to look at is how some of the cells that the previous speaker spoke about, T cells, other immune cells, how they traffic to the tumor and potentially can be used as cell therapies, but we can study them in human organoids in vitro or in the lab.
So about 3 years ago, Alex and I realized that we aren't the only ones that are interested in studying organoids and three-dimensional platforms, and so we kind of took a survey and realized there were several other people. So we created the Organoid Technology Program, and in that program we have multiple different people from many colleges, spanning from College of Medicine, bioengineering, engineering, as well as the vet school and pharmacology. And so this group has really been a grassroots efforts. There are a little bit of overlap with the Center for Cancer Engineering, but there are some differences as well. And so this group has really fostered a lot of collaborations. What this has ultimately led to is some initial seed grants from the James and the College of Medicine. And this has really spurred off into foundational awards, multiple R21s, as well as an R01 equivalent. And most recently, hot off the press, we're in the process of finalizing a new study where we'll be able to look at a rare cancer Merkel cell, and then we'll be able to really study a novel drug that could potentially target Merkel cell. One of the things, like I had just mentioned about Merkel cell, one of the really wonderful things about organoids is that they have a lot of patient specificity. So when we look at organoids, they can have the same mutations as the original tumor from the patient, and that can vary from patient 1 to patient 2, but on top of that, within one patient, we can see multiple different mutations as well. So this gives us a level of complexity that we really weren't able to understand before. And so with that, we can not only look at the drug responses to a patient, but we can look at how individual cells respond to a drug. So that really gives us an idea of how we can start using combinations of drugs and also understand how drug resistance might play a role in patient outcomes. So what our goal is ideally is that we can develop a clinical trial where we can use patient organoids to predict the best drug or combination of drugs for that patient.
So to sort of finish up, I'll tell a little story. So importantly, we've published this. We've now been able to generate organoids from patients that have a nearly complete immune system. And we actually do that by taking cells from the patient's lymph node and now combining it with those tumor organoids. So in one case, there was this melanoma patient who was not responding to immunotherapies. Again, not. And that's important because then when we made organoids from his tumor cells and lymph node cells and treated them with immune checkpoint blockade, a type of immunotherapy, they also did not respond to the therapy. So we're establishing correlation between the organoid platform and the patient. But in our lab, we did discover an alternative therapy, trametinib, a particular drug, that did work really well in the organoids. So unfortunately, the genetic sequencing that this patient's tumor had undergone did not pick up the correct mutation to qualify him for this therapy. But our data motivated a new biopsy to be taken, which was then sent out for additional genetic sequencing. And this identified a new mutation called MEK, which qualified him for this drug, trametinib. He responded almost immediately. After only about 3 weeks, the tumor had significantly decreased. But eventually there were complications and he became the tumor became resistant to the drug. We made a new batch of organoids and guess what? Those were now resistant as well. So unfortunately the patient eventually succumbed to the disease. But I think you can see from this one case that this technology, which identified an otherwise overlooked treatment and bought the patient about 6 months of his life, really has, it's really powerful and has the potential to be deployed in a clinical setting much more widely. So that's what we're trying to do. So for you researchers out there or anyone else who's interested in what we're doing in the organoid technology program, you don't have to do organoids in your work. You can do something completely different but complementary. If you're interested, reach out to Priya or reach out to myself. We'd love to kind of bring you into the fold. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Dr. Flor Backus and Dr. David O'Malley.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out. It's great to see everybody. I'm Dr. David O'Malley from the Ohio State Division of Gynecological Oncology and the James Cancer Center, in case you didn't know that we're here. I'm honored to lead the division. This has been an amazing year for the James, and has been an amazing year for the Division of Gynecological Oncology. And most importantly, it's been an amazing year for our patients in gynecological oncology. Dr. Backus.
Yeah, and I wish we could, so I'm a full professor actually, so got to update those slides now, Dr. O'Malley. But it's okay, I've only been in your division for about 10 years. We wish we could highlight all of our physicians. It's been a great year for our patients, but also for us for participation. And we want to highlight some of our clinical trial work that we've been doing. Dr. Bixel is leading a multinational surgical trial for cervical cancer. Dr. Cosgrove received the Moonshot Grant to work for his work on endometrial cancer. So really, really great things. Like I said, I wish we could tell you more about everything, but we're going to focus on some clinical trials that we've been part of since really from the ground up, first in humans, in ovarian and endometrial cancer. So,
I think a lot of people don't realize what we do in GY oncology. Not only do we do surgery with Dr. Bixel leading a multinational trial, but we also do chemotherapy, and really has been the groundwork of our establishment in clinical trials across the U.S. and across the world. Let me tell you the story about Patty. Patty's actually from southern Indiana and was receiving her therapy at the University of Pennsylvania on a phase 1 clinical trial. And she sought out and found a clinical trial with mirvetuximab, an antibody-drug conjugate. So remember, for an antibody-drug conjugate, we have the receptor, the antigen, connects, releasing its context into the cell for truly personalized cell death. So she found our clinical trial here, first in human, and this was actually the first in human trial that we were able to do at OSU in gyn-onc. And that was 3 years ago. And not only did she get on that trial, she's been on that agent now for 3 years with platinum-resistant ovarian cancer.
So I think you have to clarify a little bit for the audience why you emphasize that 3 years a little bit. What did you tell her at that point that her chances were?
Well, she came to us, and the reason she came to us, she knew with platinum-resistant ovarian cancer that her overall survival median would be less than 12 months, with response rates of about 10% plus or minus 5%, and the duration of those response being 3 to 4 months. So when she were participating in this trial, getting this antibody-drug conjugate, this just recently, actually 3 weeks ago, this trial, as well as other trials, led to the accelerated approval for MIRV in patients with platinum-resistant ovarian cancer. So over the last year, the 9-year history of when this trial first opened, we now have an accelerated approval and a new therapy for our patients. I'm very honored to not only lead that trial, but now most recently, with platinum-resistant ovarian cancer, those patients have had multiple therapies. We're now moving this agent earlier in the lines of therapy into, though recurrent, platinum sensitive. And this trial is a multinational trial that I'm leading, which will look at MIRV plus bevacizumab antivascular therapy in a maintenance setting in platinum-sensitive ovarian cancer compared to Bev. So when we look at this across the country, we see that this enrolling onto clinical trials has really opened up some of these options. Dr. Bacchus, you now lead our disease group, one of the largest disease groups in the country for clinical trials in GYN oncology. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got there?
Yeah, we've been, and obviously this is not just our work, this is the work of our whole team. I'm very grateful for all the support that we as a gynecologic oncology group have received from the clinical trials office, from the university, from the cancer center, that we've been able to build this. But really what is probably most critical is that all the physicians in our group are so excited about clinical trials. And we all very much believe that this is going to be bringing the science forward and really working towards cure and long-term remissions for our patients. So, and by enrolling, that has led to us enrolling very well in those trials. And as you enroll well, meaning you put a lot of patients on the trial and they participate, you also get a chance to be part of the design and the next level of the trials, which have been very honored to be at the forefront of some of these discoveries. And so I'll tell you a little another little example of Sue. So she came 6 years ago with recurrent endometrial cancer. Just tell us how many drugs did we have approved at that time?
Yeah. We were talking about this before. We literally had one drug approved for for recurrent uterine cancer. Megestrol is the one drug. It's a progesterone therapy, a hormone therapy for recurrent endometrial cancer. And Sue was able to get on this trial.
And so as some of the credit to some of the investigators here at OSU also, they were part of the discovery that some of these patients with mismatch repair deficiency were exquisitely sensitive to immunotherapy. And so this patient went on an immunotherapy with a PD-1 inhibitor, and she completed her 2 years of trial, and then stopped the medication. And very glad to say that she now just comes to visit me in the office just on a yearly basis to check in and confirm that she remains in remission. So we're now going from 0 drugs to highly specialized, personalized, targeted medicine, but seeing cures in these patients, which is incredibly exciting.
And that trial was updated and just published this year in JCO, where I was the lead author, and it led to then full approval for Pembro in patients with recurrent uterine cancer. Now what we're trying to do is move it in patients with recurrent cancer into earlier lines of therapy. Dr. Bacchus, you're really leading the charge with regards to earlier lines of therapy for for endometrial cancer being treated by immune therapy.
Yeah, and here's where some of that fun comes in. OSU has always been a very strong genetics center with Dr. Heather Hempel and Dr. Albert LaChapelle, who've been leading their research with Lynch syndrome. So we've been testing these patients for a long time to see if they had Lynch syndrome, but then also discovered that if they had this change in their tumor that we could see on pathology, that they were also highly sensitive to immunotherapy. So as what we're doing now is bringing this not just from the recurrent setting, but also trying to cure more patients, so bringing it to the front line and even for early stage patients with this very specific change. And I'm honored to be the lead for this for the national trial and just completed enrollment for this. So hopefully in 2-3 years, we'll be able to give you some good news and see if the standard is going to be changed.
And are we going to be able to replace chemotherapy with immune therapy in these patients with mismatch repair deficiency?
I hope so. There have been great data in other disease types, rectal cancer, for example, had some really exciting results in the same space, but then also in endometrial cancer, we're participating and leading in a trial here that is an international trial that hopefully will be able to change the standard from chemotherapy for these patients with recurrent endometrial cancer and replacing it with immunotherapy and seeing long-term long-term remissions and ultimately cures again.
Well, Dr. Bacchus is being modest. She's the co-national PI of this trial, which may change the standard of care, how we treat recurrent and advanced uterine cancer. You know, when we look at how these opportunities have come up, it really comes to enrollment on clinical research and enrollment on these clinical trials. It's offered up opportunities for ourselves, the two on the stage tonight, but our entire practice. And having that commitment through the entire practice to get patients to improve the care of patients with cancer and GYN cancer. This also then led us to recruit Dr. Laura Chambers from the Cleveland Clinic out of fellowship, one of the most prolific fellows I've ever seen with over 50 publications while in fellowship. She's working on the microbiome, so looking at are there other interventions that we can do to improve our outcomes in IO therapy and uterine cancer. Most importantly, what we've done is improve the options for our patients with GYN cancers. The patient has to be at the center, and all of these options are to improve, to now cure women with metastatic, advanced, and recurrent cancers. Thank you very much.
Please welcome to the stage Dr. Ashley Roscoe and Dr. Carolyn Presley.
Hello, I'm Ashley Roscoe. I'm an associate professor in the Division of Hematology and the medical director of the Oncogeriatric program.
Good evening. I'm Carolyn Presley. I'm an assistant professor in the Division of Medical Oncology, and I co-direct the Cancer and Aging Resiliency Clinic. I'm one of the 5 Beeson Scholars at Ohio State, and I'm a member of the Cancer Control Program.
Americans aged 65 years and older are the fastest growing demographic in our population. In the next 10 years, there are estimated 77 million people who are going to be aged 65 years and older. And importantly, cancer is a disease of aging adults. 51% of Americans 65 and older live in only 9 states, and as you can imagine, Ohio is one of them. Healthcare organizations are collectively underprepared to address the unique needs of aging adults with cancer. Treating older adults with cancer is complicated, not only clinically, but also socially and environmentally. You've heard this evening so many of the advances when it comes to clinical trials, but importantly, many of the patients live in the communities, and how are we going to be able to best support them with these complicated therapies moving forward? This surge in the number of older adults, uniquely vulnerable older adults, is poised to create one of the greatest important changes in a healthcare crisis potentially for healthcare organizations. There is good news, however. We here at Ohio State are prepared to be able to meet this challenge head on. As the medical director of the Oncogeriatric program, a new state-of-the-art program, our vision is to be able to be the premier destination for the region, providing integrated, personalized care for older adults with cancer. really to be able to serve as a partner for life throughout the cancer care trajectory. We listed here have created an oncogeriatric care clinic. This is a multidisciplinary clinic to be able to better support patients with cancer. Think about many of the older adults with cancer. So not only are they diagnosed with the malignancy, but also it's impacting other aspects of their health. Things like in addition of medications and polypharmacy, impacting their nutrition, their physical function, their hearing, their cognitive status. So importantly, when it comes to routine oncology care, our care clinics are one-stop visits where they're able to see an oncologist or a geriatric oncologist in combination with our multidisciplinary team featured here. Our interdisciplinary team includes faculty and staff across four colleges, cross-cutting integration with many divisions and different departments here at Ohio State, and also in collaboration with the OSU Cancer Control Program, the Center for Cancer Health Equity, and the Office of Geriatrics. Our oncogeriatric program focuses on 4 pillars: education, clinical research, outreach, and clinical care delivery. Our educational program has initiatives including the development of an ACGME curriculum and oncogeriatric grand rounds, really to be able to train our learners across all stages in the principles of gerontology. Our outreach program includes partnership with community organizations and also creates access to the critical programs like transplant in rural Ohio. And importantly, most of cancer is treated in the community. So in order for patients to be able to create access, we have to create those channels. Our translational program has funding through key agencies such as the NCI, the NIA, and also the creation of an aging corps led by Dr. Kristen Bird. Our clinical program is dynamic and nationally known, including appointments at the FDA. There are many examples of this interdisciplinary research that our care clinic and oncogeriatric program features. Examples of that include Dr. Jessica Kroc-Shane, who's using exercise as medicine, Professor Diane Von Ah, who is looking at cognitive interventions for older adults with cancer. Our clinical multidisciplinary care clinic is the first and only program that has been recognized by the Institute for Healthcare Improvement here at Ohio State, designated as age-friendly. Our clinical and translational program is shaping the future for cancer and aging, and it couldn't be possible with collaborators like Dr. Presley.
Thanks, Dr. Roscoe. So the reality we all face is that even if you are not old, cancer will age you. We know that a new cancer diagnosis is an accelerant of frailty. So our team here in the care clinic, we've developed methods to simultaneously provide a 360 geriatric oncology evaluation, but then we can also get a single tube of blood and determine the degree of cellular senescence. We can then incorporate that biologic signature with the clinical phenotype to provide customized recommendations and interventions that can hopefully prevent or reverse functional decline and frailty. So what types of interventions? Dr. Roscoe mentioned a few examples. Physical therapy or exercise is actually incredibly important for older adults so that they do not experience functional decline or worsen frailty. We have one of the first virtual health, physical therapy, and relaxation interventions called ROAR for older adults with lung cancer, and that's funded by the National Institute of Aging. Dr. Roscoe has also performed an exercise study in patients with multiple myeloma funded by the National Cancer Institute. We also have multiple geriatric pharmacists who, they are not old themselves, they are quite young, but they teach us how to deprescribe medications. So for example, you receive a new cancer diagnosis and you're on 4 blood pressure medications. You start your cancer treatment, whether it's chemotherapy, immunotherapy, or on a clinical trial. Maybe you don't feel like eating and drinking as much. Maybe you have nausea, maybe you have diarrhea, and you get dehydrated, but you're still dutifully taking all 4 blood pressure medications. Then you start to feel dizzy, and you're actually trying to get into clinic, and you trip and fall and break your hip, and now you're in the hospital. So our pharmacists and our team, as part of that multidisciplinary care clinic, can recognize some of these things that happen. that we don't even necessarily think, actually, my blood pressure is low, and when I stand up, it gets even lower. And I actually need to stop some of these medications because I'm going through my cancer treatment. We are also leading with Dr. Colleen Spies, a dear friend and collaborator of ours, one of the first studies to actually provide older adults food in the NutriCare study for older adults and other vulnerable populations while they're undergoing their lung cancer treatment. We also do a lot around social support, how to get to your appointments. We partner with Dr. Pasquette, the Center for Health Equity, as Dr. Osco mentioned, and provide patient navigation when able. And then finally, senolytics are medications that are actually able to clear the senescent cells that are in our bodies that accumulate as we age. And we are able to use existing senolytics and create new ones that can actually come together with the cancer treatment to actually make the cancer treatment work better and for people to live better while they're going through their cancer treatment. So our Oncogeriatrics program is making a major impact, improving not only just survival, but also quality of life. We really feel strongly about our patients not only living longer, but living better. And really, our program is generating new insights into the relationships between aging science and cancer. So we'd really like to thank everyone who has helped us to get to this point, and we invite you to participate in this groundbreaking research and programming. So in closing, please join us as we look to build a cancer and aging center here at the James. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Dr. David Cohn, Dr. Rafe Pollock, and our moderator, Dr. Jennifer Woyak.
Good evening, everybody. I'm excited to be here today as the moderator of the State of the Cancer Program address. You already know our panelists, Dr. David Cohn, Interim CEO of the James, and Dr. Rafe Pollock, Director of the Ohio State Comprehensive Cancer Center. My name is Jennifer Woyak. I'm a hematologist-oncologist here at the James that specializes in treating patients with chronic lymphocytic leukemia, or CLL. And I'm the co-leader of the Leukemia Research Program within the Comprehensive Cancer Center. Okay, let's get on to the questions. Dr. Pollock, we'll start with you. Earlier this evening, we saw you at the new Interdisciplinary Research Building. Can you tell us more about the exciting research that's taking place, as well as some of the new grants the Cancer Center has had this year?
Sure, thank you, Jen. It's been an amazing year in the research arena for the Cancer Center. The new IRF facility, when it opens up in this spring and early summer, will house our PIIO, the Pelotonia Institute for Immuno-Oncology, and the Center for Cancer Engineering. By any measure, we have been very, very successful. $110 million worth of extramural funding, 66 million of which is from the National Cancer Institute. These are all-time highs for the Cancer Center. Over the past 3 years, a recruitment of more than 100 faculty working as a team, a lot of effort expended by a number of individuals. These are new Cancer Center members that are drawn from 11 of the 15 colleges at Ohio State and nationwide. So by any measure, it's been a remarkable period of progress and success.
Wow, that's amazing. The future really looks bright here at Ohio State.
It does.
So moving on to you, Dr. Cohn. So treatment options for our patients are improving almost daily now. Can you share with us some of the innovative cancer treatments that are taking place here at the James?
Yeah, thank you for that, and thanks everybody for being here. You heard an amazing set of presentations. First in human studies, phase 1 studies, drug development that leads to indications by the FDA. I think that the science speaks for itself, and so I'd like to focus on some of the other areas of care delivery. We heard about the Oncogeriatric Cares Clinic, a very unique entity that very few places across the country actually have and do anything close to as well as we do. But there's other examples. For anybody that's taking care of our cancer patients, the immediate care center, our urgent care for cancer, is a really very unique opportunity to minimize the chance of patients needing to be admitted to the hospital and minimize the need to be in the emergency department. Nobody wants to send a patient to the ED, and certainly no patient wants to be in the ED as well. We also have just recently developed our James Diagnostic Clinic. So for anyone that's been in the airport or watched television, you've seen advertisements for the diagnostic clinic. It's been an unbelievable opportunity to actually take patients in the community who are either referred by their physicians, their nurse practitioners, advanced practice providers, or self-referred who are worried that they could have cancer, and leveraging the incredible diagnostic skills that we have here and opportunities and technology at OSU and the medical center to ensure that our patients get prompt diagnosis and get them into treatment as early as possible. So I think those are some examples of treatments in some way that is quite unique to the James Cancer Hospital that really distinguishes us as a very top-tier cancer program.
Absolutely. As a clinician also, this is really wonderful news for our patients. So to continue our momentum, we need to have the resources, both in dollars and in people. So with our new buildings going up, a staffing shortage, and emerging from the pandemic, I'd like to hear from both of you about how you are addressing these challenges. Dr. Cohn, can you go first?
Yeah, anybody that's been involved in taking care of cancer patients again, or that has a family member, friend, or themselves being treated, you realize how the staffing crisis, the Great Resignation, has impacted all of us. First of all, I just want to acknowledge how hard it's been across the entire medical center. It has been a challenge to take care of patients in the way that we, have to do and take pride in doing. And so I would say that the future is truly bright. We realize that year over year, our hiring of our overall staff has increased by 20%. Our nursing hiring has increased year over year by 15%. And I think as a really good measure of health of our institution, we're starting to see nurses who have left our organization during the pandemic turn around and are being hired today, who want to still be working here and want to be the future of nursing care at the James. So it is certainly a challenge that we have to recognize. All of that being said, we've also been recognized by, for the care that we deliver. I want to recognize our nursing program for their magnet redesignation. It's an amazing, magnet is a magnet designation occurs only in 10% or less of hospitals across the US. And we've been magnet designated now with what are called 9 exemplars. Those are 9 examples of things that we do incredibly well that others don't. Certainly I'm not very competitive as a surgeon. And so I suppose I shouldn't point out the fact that neither MD Anderson in Houston nor Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York have had as many exemplars in their last magnet designation. So despite the fact that it's been hard, the quality of the care that's been delivered at the James is really as strong as it's ever been. I want to thank everybody for the work that they do to make that happen.
That's wonderful, thank you. And Dr. Pollack?
Yeah, the whole COVID crisis, if you will, presented a major challenge to our research enterprise. At the beginning, the necessity for social isolation, the prohibitions about pre- and postdoctoral students and fellows being in the laboratory en masse, the inability for scientists to casually communicate, which is such an important part of what we try to do as investigators. It was a huge challenge to be able to move the research enterprise forward, and yet, with your help, it happened. There was no lapse in publications. The grants we've already talked about. Importantly, in the publications arena, fully 20% of the papers that are published are with an impact factor of 10 or greater, which is a remarkable contribution. Probably the area that was most difficult to adjudicate was in the realm of clinical research. Coming out of the COVID crisis, we had many people, particularly in the clinical trials office, who were recruited out from the institution. And at one point, we were fully 35% understaffed relative to our needs, and that impacted directly on our ability to open clinical trials and accrue patients. I'd like to give a shout out to the other members of the Cancer Center Executive Group, particularly Peter Shields and David Goski. the three of us interviewed 135 remaining CTO employees, and we found out a number of issues that we were able to address, including working with HR to adjust compensation, the need to develop professional tracks for individuals, resulting in a new master's program in clinical science, and the ability to adjust some of the quality of life work issues, such as being able to work more frequently from home, provided that it didn't jeopardize patient care or the clinical trials effort. So these were all examples of ways that we had to cope, and fortunately we have been able to. We're still a little bit below where we want to be in terms of staffing at the CTO. We're now about 5% short, that's the gap, but I'm very confident that we will not only make that up, but exceed our obvious needs and benchmarks. And this in turn has translated into our maintaining a very, very robust clinical research trials portfolio.
Thank you so much for addressing that complex question. So now as we look forward, I think many of us have heard about the ambition to become a top 10 cancer program. Can you tell us a little bit about what it means to be a top 10 program? How is it measured and how do we get there?
Well, in candor, I don't really know what that means, but there are certainly some benchmarks and some activities that can be measured. And whether or not these are the right indices, I don't know, but there they are, and so we have to think about them in terms of our own performance portfolio. The number of grants, the amount of funding, the number of multi-center and multi-investigator proposals just in the grants arena, square footage of research space, a very critical factor that we're going to have to continue almost constitutively to address if we want to maintain where we are. Yet another issue, recruitment targeted to the 5 CCSG-funded programs, as well as 4 initiatives and other components of the strategic plan, making sure that our stipends are competitive for predoctoral and postdoctoral trainees. All of these are challenges, and yet I am very, very confident that not only do we have a remarkable base of support from the community as well as the university and the medical center at large, and our ability to continue to collaborate and work as a team is what's going to ultimately carry the day.
Thank you. So Dr. Cohn, what does it mean to you to be a top 10 cancer program?
Thank you. And so a lot of the same comments. I think it's the team and the community that are really what sets us apart. External measurements, we've got U.S. News and World Report. We can kind of think about whether that's the right metric, just as Dr. Pollack said. It's a composite of quality and outcomes. I think all of those things are important, plus reputation. Internally, we measure ourselves by our Vizient Quality and Accountability Scorecard. We've talked about our long-range quality plan and how important it is to ensure that we're in a position to have a quality program, that we're reliable in delivering the highest quality care that we're able to do. And then we've talked a lot about patient experience. This is something that we have pride ourselves very strongly in how our patients feel when they're here. We are a top decile performer in that area, and we're hoping that all of our other programs also follow in the direction of being top decile. But the last piece that I would make is to ensure that our workforce is in a place where we are also top 10, and that includes our recruitment and also the recognition of the importance of diversity and inclusion in everything that we do. I know many in the audience and those that are going to be listening have been involved in our diversity and inclusion task force. Almost 100 people were involved in putting together this project to ensure that we're going to be in a position of having a diverse workforce, reaching out to our community to ensure that our patients that are entering the James look like the communities that we serve. And that program and project has been actually endorsed by our leadership team, and we're going to continue to work on rolling that out to ensure that it is also our workforce, which is diverse, and that we are being inclusive. That's going to make us a top 10 program.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Okay, one last question for you both. First, Dr. Cohn, why the OSUCCC James? Why do you choose every day to be part of this exceptional cancer program?
So that's easy. I've been here for 22 years. I came here for a job and for mentorship, and what I found was a family and a community. And so it's a mission-driven organization. My father died of cancer at the age of 52. When I was a fourth-year medical student, I had no intention of being an oncologist, and now, many years later, here I am. And I think it's just the mission and the recognition that we're able to contribute to patients' lives at a very specific time that allows me to get up every day to be energized for the work that we do. And I'm going to try to do this without getting emotional, but I want to read a letter that I got this week from a family member of a patient. And I'm sad to say this, but this came from a return address which was a middle school. And so this is a child of a mother who is in our care. And the letter said, "Dear James Hospital, thank you for being so empathetic and caring. You helped me when I was in a bad time. You added a level of care that made it feel like a second home. Thank you to the nurses that took me trick-or-treating in the hospital when my mother could not. Thank you to the doctors who would buy me a Jell-O cup every day. Thank you to the mental health specialists who would take time out of their day to talk to me. Thank you all for helping my mother even though her illness overcame her. Gratefully." And I just think about that letter and say, this is what we do. This is why we're here. This is what gets me up, and I'm sure what gets everybody up. It's a team and it's the community, and I think that's the most important thing for what we're able to offer our patients and each other. So thank you, everybody, for being here and for what you do.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Dr. Pollack?
Well, it's very hard to top that letter, but in point of fact, I do, without being as eloquent, share some of those same sentiments. I'm one of several physicians I know who is both a cancer provider and cancer researcher as well as a cancer patient here at the James. Jen, you're my doctor, and I'm very, very grateful for that. That did not have anything to do with your being selected as the moderator, right? But it's a tremendous motivation to be part of something that is bigger than yourself, and to be able to wake up every morning and know that on a very personal level, know that the drug that is keeping me alive was developed here through research from people like you and John Bird and Carlo Croce and others who are very interested in the CLL problem. It's a tremendous incentive to not only get out of bed, but also the letter that David read. It speaks to me on a very personal basis, and I am thankful and grateful, frankly, that I have the opportunity to be here.
Thank you. Well, thank you both for this wonderful discussion. I really enjoyed listening to all of your answers and really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope that you all did too. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Joyce Buckley.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joyce. I'm a scheduler over at Morehouse on the GI oncology floor, and I have a superpower. A little over a year ago, I started to have a lot of discomfort in my abdomen. I couldn't eat. I was nauseous. My stomach started to swell. I thought maybe I was getting older. Maybe it was premenopausal. It wasn't until that well-meaning acquaintance said, "Honey, when are you having your baby?" I finally sought help. I wound up in the emergency room. They sent me over to Gyn-Onc, who immediately referred me to Dr. Kim. Which Dr. Kim was my first question, even though I knew. Dr. Alex Kim, the same Dr. Kim that works with us over at Morehouse on the GI oncology unit. I knew his team well. I knew of him in passing, very quick passing. At the first appointment, here I am sitting in the chairs that I walk by every day. Dr. Kim came in the room, and I like to tell people that he met me where I was emotionally. He put my scan up on the screen and said, "Here's what I see." My appendix was releasing fluid and filling up my abdomen. He took me to surgery. He performed a procedure called HIPEC. He opened me up and removed all of the fluid, all of the tumors that had started to accumulate, and all of the organs that had been compromised by this fluid. He then used warm chemo and put it into my abdominal cavity just to be sure to kill all of that fluid and all of those remaining cells. The procedure took 14 hours. From start to finish, my time that I spent at the James was met with kindness, compassion, encouragement. And when I was discharged a week later, I walked into my house. It had been filled with candles and pajamas and fluffy pillows and blankets and food in the freezer. My coworkers decided what they were going to do for me was to create a spa of comfort for my recovery. 3 months later, I was well enough, finally, to come back to work. And shortly after that, Dr. Kim found himself needing a surgery scheduler. And I ran to my supervisor's office. It's got to be me. I'm the one. I might have said please. I don't think I did. And that was when my superpower was activated. I get to walk into patients' rooms and say, here is the date of your very scary surgery. By the way, Dr. Kim is my surgeon too, and I had the exact same very scary surgery. I get to walk into the room and say those words, and I get to watch fear, terror, anxiety melt. I assume that everyone is like me and needs time for information to sink in, especially heavy information. So I let the patients know, as this sinks in, as you start to have questions, you call me and ask those questions, and we can talk through it, even the personal ones. Surprisingly, not a lot of people have taken me up on this. I had a lot of introspection. Maybe I was making people feel uncomfortable. Maybe I was oversharing, or I'm very awkward, so maybe people just didn't want to talk to me. And it's not until recently that I realized the act of me walking into their room upright is enough. I feel so honored that I get to work with Dr. Kim and with Katie Berlin, his nurse practitioner. I feel proud that I get to represent them and have such a specific impact on patients on a regular basis. I've made a promise to myself and a couple of others that as long as I work at Ohio State, it's going to be my goal to attempt to be the type of person for others that so many people were for me during my time that I needed it. I am just one patient of millions, and we all have separate stories, and mine is just one. Thanks.
just kind of become friends and held my hand through some really difficult days and have celebrated my victories. They shake their head at me sometime when I go in and said, I shoveled my driveway this week. And they said, you did what? They've just become friends, and I could never repay them or thank them enough. I am not just surviving anymore. I live a full, thriving life.
They are going to look at you as an individual. They are going to put out an array of choices, sometimes overwhelmingly, but they have incredible resources and information for you to make that decision. So throughout the time, I felt listened to, and I felt like there was acceptance of different ways to conquer the problem.
My big thing about it, I feel like it saved my life. It's over with now, and I beat it.
Thank you for attending the State of the Cancer Program address. Please join us in the lobby for refreshments. Thank you.